He looked up for a split second and saw me, but without missing a beat, he stood up, pulled the mic up, dropped his pants, and continued. At that moment, a staff member brought a group of Girl Scouts to stand outside the studio and peer in. They wanted to meet the crazy man. That was 1974. Writing the story of my life is a daunting task. I'm forced to be introduced to my former self and travel back to times and places I don't necessarily want to visit again. Such is the nature of remembering, so that people I love and who love me will know about the journey. My life is my message. 98% of what you hear or see is bullshit, and I'm not afraid to say so. People are put off by me because I've never played the political correctness game. I usually tell people what I think, with unfiltered words, and that's gotten me into a jam more than once. Others suggested numerous times that I run for office. I would never be elected, because I'd have to tell the voting public what was bullshit and what wasn't. Of course, Donald Trump got into the White House doing just that. But I don't play well with others, and I would have to make decisions solely based on the benefits to the people that voted me in, not how it would impact another politician's agenda. I've been telling my kids all their lives, you can't control anybody else. You're only in charge of yourself. I could tell you I'm in charge of the pages you read here, warts and all. Chapter 1.
Gary, it's getting late. Come in for dinner.
Their voices floated up from the sidewalk and through my window at 1212 Newkirk Avenue in Brooklyn. Peering out, I could barely make out the shadowy figures under a lamppost. They were trying to harmonize Why Do Fools Fall in Love, a song that was originally a hit for Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers in January of 1956. They sounded pretty good for neighborhood guys. I was 6 years old. What an incredible time to be a kid. My mother's maiden name was Bernice Anzelowitz, but she called herself Bunny. She agreed to marry my father, Mel Gopin, in 1949. My grandfather on my mother's side, Louis Anzelowitz, was a successful restaurateur and could afford to give my mother a grand wedding. There were about 350 guests, a live orchestra, and a man that walked around from table to table with a portable record-cutting machine to interview guests and family members, sort of like an on-the-spot Larry King. My grandfather also hired a still photographer and a cinematographer to film the entire reception. The orchestra played as people were served from carving stations amongst massive ice sculptures. The setting looked like a giant society dinner. Clarinetist Artie Shaw, a friend of my grandfather's, played. The wedding cost my grandfather about $50,000, a big outlay in 1949. The same wedding would run hundreds of thousands of dollars today. A year later, I was born. Arthur G. Gopin. 2 years later, my parents were divorced. My grandfather was pissed off and tried to get my dad to reconsider. He even threatened to come after him. My dad told him, I was in World War II and had soldiers shooting at me. You think I'm afraid of you? I don't remember actually living with my dad. That's understandable because I was barely 2 when Mel and Bunny divorced. A few years after the divorce, my mom married Albert Kovelman, who became my stepdad, and both he and my mother raised me along with Mel. I look back at my life in Brooklyn with fondness, but to most people, the apartment building where we lived looked like a slum. Not to me. I loved the city sounds, the brakes from a distant bus, a fire truck screaming by, and honking of horns, all lulled me to sleep. What's really strange is that I loved the smell of bus exhaust. My world consisted of about 3 blocks, Newkirk Avenue, Westminster Road, and Coney Island Avenue. I had everything I needed in Brooklyn. PS 217 was across the street. The grocery and the luncheonette was on the other side. I used to go to the grocer, shove my hand way down the wooden pickle barrel, and pull up the fattest, most sour pickle I could find. For some reason, we didn't give a crap about germs back then. There was no Purell and no Ebola. That pickle, along